Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your racing robot hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we've got you covered. Today we will solve murder mysteries in the future and burn rubber in the present, because I will start us off with a look at the long overdue anime adaptation of the manga Pluto, Naoki Urusawa's dark reimagining of the Astro Boy universe. And after that, John and I will take our seats at the racing track and review the sports drama Overtake, the newest outing from the team that brought us one of our favorites from recent years, Recreators. So get ready to unleash your cluster arm cannon, get your ass on that winner's podium, and definitely don't pause the pod. We'll be right back. Gesicht, an android police detective of Europol, is tasked with finding the murderer of Mont Blanc, a retired war hero robot. Although it appears that only a robot could have committed this crime, the murder of a renowned robot rights activist casts doubts on the criminal's identity. Indeed, outside of an isolated and unexplained incident that occurred 8 years ago, robots are programmed to be unable to kill human beings. However, the lack of human evidence on the crime scene and the similarity of modus operandi lead Gesicht to suspect that the two murderers might be the same being, be they man or robot. Shortly after Mont Blanc's passing, another retired Elite War robot is mysteriously eliminated. Gesicht notices a pattern in the choice of murder victim. Both dead robots belong to a group of the 7 most powerful war machines ever designed. Determined to stop the murderer from eliminating the 5 remaining veterans, Gesicht seeks help from Atom, a cutting-edge android who resembles a human boy. The duo must now hunt down the rogue killer before the series of murders is carried on, lest the very fabric of society suffer irredeemable damage. Thanks to my animalist for that summary. I didn't write any of that. So, Pluto is based on a manga by Naoki Urusawa, as stated in the intro of the show. That ran for 8 volumes from 2003 to 2009. One of the rare cases where we talk about an anime adaptation of the manga that is actually finished. Naoki Urusawa is probably most well known for his hit manga 20th Century Boys and, of course, Monster. Monster already received the hit anime adaptation. Still waiting for one of 20th Century Boys, but he also wrote other stuff like Master Keaton and Yawara, a fashionable judo girl, which got an anime adaptation as well. I feel like I should seek those out. I've never looked at them, but I heard at least really good things about Master Keaton, so I guess I should seek those out.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of all of these things, but never actually watched any, so.
Yeah, I mean, Yawara is a bit older, I think, but that exists. It has a lot of episodes, so I don't know how easily they are attainable, but yeah, maybe I'll take a look. At least the summary of Buster Keaton sounded really interesting. And he did a bunch of manga that haven't gotten an adaptation yet, like Billy Bat or Asadora. He's a very prolific mangaka who has received a lot of awards for his work, but it feels like his stuff is not as overexposed as that of other mangaka, and he is not as often mentioned, maybe because his stories don't necessarily fit into the popular standard genre space. Which brings us to Pluto, of which the anime adaptation got 8 one-hour-long episodes on Netflix, which were handled by Studio M2, who haven't done much else yet aside from 2 movies, one of them being a Garou movie, I think the compilation movie of the 2nd season, and the TV show Onihei, really. That's kind of their whole vita up to now, Pluto included. But if you look at who founded that studio, you can immediately make some assumptions in regards to the talent behind this show, because that is Masao Maruyama, who was the co-founder of Madhouse as well as the founder of MAPPA. He handed the presidency of MAPPA over to Manabu Otsuka in 2016 and established M2 in the same year, then specializing in planning and pre-production. Quoting from Wikipedia, at the age of 75, Maruyama wanted to execute at least 2 more big projects, so he established a studio to prepare for the execution of his projects even if he was gone. The upcoming movie M. Finder seems to be one of those big projects. Don't know if Pluto was the other one. I mean, he absolutely produced Pluto together with Tao Maki and Yuji Yamano. But yeah, I'm not sure if this is one of them, but M. Finder, the movie, is definitely one of the things that he wanted to do, apparently. But yeah, who directed Pluto? That would be Toshio Kawaguchi, and it looks like this is his first full-on directing gig, weirdly enough, because he has been in the industry for a long time, mostly as a key animator on little projects like, maybe you've heard of them, Akira, Castle in the Sky, My Neighbor Totoro, Princess Mononoke, Royal Space Force, Ghost in the Shell 2, Venus Wars, Jinro, Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin, the Neon Genesis Evangelion Death and Rebirth, and End of Evangelion movies. He also was the animation director of an episode of that show, and he was the character designer and animation director on Porco Rosso. So, long story...
None of those ring a bell.
Yeah, no, not at all. Never heard of them. So long story short, the guy has been in it. And it looks like M2 pulled a bunch of other talent who worked on previous Ghibli, Madhouse, and Mappa stuff, and some of the other Naoki Urusawa adaptations as well. And it shows. This is a goddamn gorgeous series. Lavish backdrops with impressive futuristic cityscapes, an impeccable translation of Urasawa's detailed and hyper-expressive character designs to the screen. The show doesn't have that much action, since it's mostly a dialogue-driven murder mystery show, but when the action hits, it goddamn hits, trust me. The music is also fantastic and handled by none other than Yugo Kanno, who of course gave us the terrific soundtracks to Psychopaths and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3, 4, 5, and 6. I don't know if this one eclipses those other two, but if I listened to them back to back, it just might, because the music in Pluto is really fantastic. So yeah, we got an all-star crew here. But what is Pluto actually about? No, wait, before I get to the actual story and the characters, let me get the one thing out of the way that was the only real wrinkle on the positive impression of this show for me. The 1 hour format doesn't work well for this story, in my opinion. Pluto often changes the setting and character focus from chapter to chapter. If you read it weekly, this isn't very noticeable. But if you watch 1 hour worth of chapters at once, the change of focus seems more frequent and might on occasion feel somewhat confusing and abrupt. Your 25-minute episodes would probably have been better for this, especially since the show has a very deliberate pace to begin with. Maybe someone thought not enough would be happening during 25 minutes for several episodes, so they went for 1 hour instead, or they were like, hey, it's on Netflix, so people are gonna binge it anyway. I don't know. Either way, I don't think they made the entirely right decision here. There were definitely some moments in the show where the story presented something that would have been a great end of episode cliffhanger, and yet it's somewhere in the middle of the episode, so something is definitely not lined up quite right. It probably doesn't matter if you, like I said, binge the episodes anyway, which is Netflix's model, but it still shows that the 1 hour episodes don't quite work for the adaptation of this story. They did the same thing with Spriggan. It worked better there because the chapters were set up in a way that accommodated that format better, but it still wasn't great. So up to now, I feel like I haven't seen an anime that really made use of the standard, I guess, US TV show, long form, 1 hour thing format. I think especially anime that are, adapted from manga, kind of are more suited to this 24-minute runtime, because the amount of chapters you can cram into that and how it works just works better, I guess, with that format. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll get more, especially on services like Netflix and stuff like that. Maybe we get more shows that do the 1 hour format, and some of those will work better. But that was the only thing here in Pluto. I was like, I don't know. This probably would have worked better in another way. So yeah, let's talk about what worked, which is everything else. Really. So yeah, the main character of this, ostensible main character, I guess, besides Atom is Gesicht, who is, like stated in the summary, a detective with a cool transformable Mega Man gun arm. And he is tasked with finding out in the first episode who murdered one of the most beloved robots in the world, Mont Blanc, from Switzerland. some things in this murder and the one of the of the robots' right activists line up. Both bodies get draped with makeshift horns, so Gesicht immediately suspects the murderers to be connected. Like I said before, the particularly spicy part about all of this is there are no traces of human residue on the human murder scene, and no human could have taken out Mont Blanc, really, because he's one of the, legendary war machines. So the most likely conclusion, of course, is that a robot murdered both of them, or something else, I guess. But according to Article 13 of the International Robot Law, no robot is allowed or should even be able to seriously hurt or kill a human being. One exception. And we'll get to that. So Gesicht has quite the puzzle on his hand. He needs to piece together. And time is running out, because aside from dropping more human bodies, it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that the killer is going after the top most advanced robots in the world. With Mont Blanc dead, there are 7 left, and Gesicht is one of them. So the show immediately constructs an engaging murder mystery. Who's the killer? Why is he gunning for the most advanced robots? And how is he able to kill them even? Why and how did he kill a human? All interesting questions the show sets up at the very beginning and then starts cooking. There's lots of world traveling. Japan, of course, but also Germany, Turkey, Scotland, Switzerland, and a couple of others. And this is Naoki Urusawa's interpretation / remake of the story The Greatest Robot on Earth, from the original Astro Boy manga by Osamu Tezuka. That ran in Shonen Magazine from June 1964 to January 1965. That story particularly. Urasawa takes different bits and pieces from all the previous versions of this character and this story, because it has been adapted multiple times. There were also multiple anime adaptations of Astro Boy up to this point, and it was in at least 2 of them. But he takes all of these and constructs a much darker and complex thriller from it. Think Watchmen when compared to your Justice League. And this is what Urasawa basically does with this universe. The story feels very mature. I know that this is a buzzword that people like to throw around as soon as there is blood and tits thrown around, but that's not what I'm talking about. This is a story that feels like it was written by an adult for adults, with a big focus on character development, an engaging mystery, politics, very little action, a very sober tone, and with precious little humor in it. For some people, that might sound like a boring slog, but that could be further from the truth, in my opinion. Then again, I am also a fan / whodunits and murder mysteries and, procedural stuff is kind of totally up my alley, especially if it's an unusual setting, which is the case in this, absolutely. And if it's an interesting universe with interesting special characters, and this show checks all of these boxes. So it's like, yeah, this show was kind of made for me. I read the manga, so I knew what was coming, but still, it's like, yeah, of course, of course I would like this. But I don't know about other people who might be more into the more action-driven shows, into more, high point emotional shows. And don't get me wrong, there are high emotions in this show, but, maybe less than in other shows. Like I said, the tone is usually most of the time more sober, and again, it's very dialogue-driven. Gesicht, he was called Gerhard in the original Astro Boy manga, is a very interesting main character. And unlike some of the other robots in the show, he's so advanced that he is barely indistinguishable from a human being. If you compare him to Mont Blanc, who really looks like an old, I don't know, even like a Bronze Age gladiator or something robot, like really like old school. And, there's some other characters that look more old schoolish or absolutely more like robots. I guess the only other one that comes close to Gesicht in terms of being indistinguishable from being a human is Atom. But yeah, Gesicht has a cool gun arm, incredibly sophisticated senses, and a very sharp mind. All of these make him the probably most capable detective of Europol. And unlike a lot of other robots as well, he is able to dream. Weird dreams of chasing down a trail of blood. It's cool how diverse the types of robots are in this show. Like I said, of course we have Gesicht, who is as close to looking human as you can get. Same for Atom. But then we also have the most basic early sci-fi movie robots that you can think of, like the wife of a police robot that gets killed in the first episode and who then helps Gesicht on his case by reviewing the memory chip of her late husband. And then we have someone like Mont Blanc, who's right in the middle, but still very old schoolish, like I said. So it's pretty cool for the story to rely on not just one robot model, but different generations and types of them. Another intriguing character who looks more old school as well is Brow, who is the last, or rather first, I think, robot who killed a human 8 years ago. He is kept as a prisoner in a high security facility and is kind of fulfilling the Hannibal Lecter role in this story. He's kind of like chained, or rather impaled to the wall so that he just can't get out of there, and there are like a bunch of guns just aimed at him. Like, people are really afraid of him. He can't get out, but he can still talk. And Gesicht seeks him out to get a glimpse into the mind of a robot who has killed a human being. Brow actually is responsible for the first title drop in the show, as he likens the horns on the victims to those of the Roman god of the underworld, Pluto. And he is a creepy bastard, but also incredibly spellbinding. So it's cool to... There are not many conversations between him and Gesicht in the show, but when there are, it's like you're really glued to the screen, because there's just this incredible atmosphere built up immediately, because Gesicht is Gesicht and Brow is Brow. And, you know, it's like I said, it's a Silence of the Lambs situation. It's like Clarice Starling, Hannibal Lecter. And yeah, that's really cool shit. Later, we get other interesting characters from the aforementioned story, like Brando and Hercules, who are still doing what they can do best, fighting, but in the ring instead of the battlefield. They are these longtime rivals of each other, but character-wise pretty different. Brando even has a family, for example, while Hercules is like the stern loner. We get Epsilon, who was called Photar in the old story, I believe, or that was just his dub name, not sure. Who took in some war orphans and watches over them. And of course, we later get pretty much the whole Atom/Astro Boy cast. Atom, of course, his sister Uran, Professor Ochanomizu, Professor Tenma. The latter two we talked about in our review of Atom the Beginning. Although those were pretty different versions of those characters, because that series highlighted their youth. I don't even know if it's considered canon or anything, but yeah, we definitely talked about that. And then only got one season. I think they didn't try to do anything else with that after the fact.
Yeah, kind of unfortunate. I would have liked to have seen more of that.
Yeah, it was a fun show. So, but yeah. And of course, we get some interesting antagonists, which I don't really want to go into because of spoilers. Pluto, of course, being one of them, I can talk about because his name is in the show's title. Pluto is terrifying. You almost only ever see him appear as a shadow in a tornado, which is very effective to build him up as this uncanny threat. Until almost the very end, you don't really see any of the fights. You may see some of a glimpse of Pluto's eyes or his head or his arm or something, but never his full face until the final 2 episodes, I think. This makes him like this unfathomable menace and is really effective. Paired with incredible music when he appears and everything. So it's good shit. But yeah, Pluto definitely is a very dialogue-driven show, like I said, with not really that much action in it, which is a bit of a shame considering how good it looks. But hey, it's nice that they put that much effort into the visuals of a show that relies more on atmosphere and character interaction and development than anything else to pull you in. But that also means that anyone who expects a certain amount of spectacle from the anime might be put off by the focus and pacing of the show, like I said. I love it. It's a great slow burn sci-fi crime story. But again, the action is sparse in this. Of course, the old version of the robots had more classic old school comic book designs, which doesn't necessarily lend themselves to a serious crime drama. And Urusawa found a clever way around that by turning some of the more outlandish designs into enormous battle armor the characters only wear when they go into fights. So in their normal lives and during conversations, they can look like normal humans. And in some of the fights, they get to be their more old school versions, which is neat. Like, it's some of old school Astro Boy fans might look at these characters in their battles and say, yeah, I remember those. And then they just, they just take out their heads out of these armors and put them on a normal human-ish body, and that's that, and then they can lead normal lives. So that makes the story seem a lot more grounded than it probably would have been if they just would have walked around in their old bodies and old designs. Not all robots are, of course, treated as equals in this world yet. Mont Blanc gets a memorial and is mourned by thousands of people, but the random police robot just gets thrown into the dumpster after he's been shot, and scavenging these kind of dead robots for parts doesn't seem to be frowned upon, really. There's an actual segregation in certain buildings between walkways for humans and walkways for robots. A lot of robots are still treated as property, and there are fanatical organizations that want to keep it that way, or rather want all robots to be returned to being slaves. So, yeah, there's definitely some political tendencies in here, and this is one of the most blatant ones, but there's some even more ridiculous, obvious ones, like,
as I say, subtext. Only cowards use subtext.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Naoki Urusawa is not much for subtext, I guess, but it's fun. Like, I think one of the brother of one of those fanatics who then goes is joining the fanatical party because he wants to avenge his brother, and is like, all the robots are his fault. His name is Adolf. And it's like, all right,
Jesus, come on.
Yes, okay. That is not a name we use in Germany anymore. Just say, I mean, some people might, but they're very problematic. So I haven't met anyone who's named that. So that was a fun bit in this show. It's like, yeah, all right. And yeah, like I already established, this is Naoki Urusawa's love letter to Osamu Tezuka's Astro Boy universe. But there are also some other small references to and cameos of other Tezuka stuff in there. If you love all of Tezuka's work or some of it, you should definitely check it out. And also check it out because it's just a terrific story, of course. But, if you know your way around Tezuka stuff, you're like, oh, wait a minute. I know that character. I know who they're talking about. So I bet John can guess what I'm referring to. So robots mimic humans to become more human themselves. Adam is, of course, the closest to being and behaving like an actual human. Like, he feels genuine joy when eating ice cream or seeing another kid play with a toy. And Gesicht, like I said, can dream, which is not usual for robots. So that is an interesting aspect of that, especially in regards to AI and everything and the whole topic of that. And that kind of also plays into the whole kind of plot catalyst of this story, which is Pluto, whatever it is, goes after the top 7 robots that have potential to be weapons of mass destruction because they're so powerful, constructed by different nations and so on. At first you think, oh, okay, is this related to an arms race thing or something, or someone trying to eliminate the competition or whatever? But it becomes very clear there's something else at play here, and it all has its roots in this conflict called the 39th Central Asian War, which is just a very thinly veiled analogy for the Iraq War. And an important part of the story is learning how the different robots were involved in the war and the mental baggage that came with that. So this is basically about a bunch of shell-shocked war veterans that are taken out by someone with a grudge. And all the robots that are being attacked so far have served in the 39th Central Asian War, where they killed a lot of their own kind. North, the robot taking the spotlight in the second half of the first episode, has constant nightmares, also one of the rare robots that can dream, but he has nightmares about his experience on the battlefield. He doesn't want to return there anymore and takes on the role of a butler for a grumpy old composer. And that man, Sir Duncan, is a very angry person, mostly because he feels like his talents might be waning, but he also has a chip on his shoulder because his mom left him when he was a child and he went blind early, and he doesn't want a robot talking to him about music, something a machine can't possibly understand. He's a grumpy old crow. But seeing those two get closer and North slowly turning the bitter frown on the old guy's face into a little smile is one of the best separate mini-stories in this show. It's really heartfelt, not only in regards to Duncan's story, but also to North and his experience and memories of the war that still haunt him. It's really good stuff. And the show continues to do that, like introducing all the, robots who served in that war and how they're living their lives now. I think the most endearing ones are probably Brando's story with his family and everything, Epsilon with the orphans, and, of course, Atom, and, Gesicht, of course, as well. So that's really cool stuff. Little character stories inside of this big murder mystery makes it very enticing. Also makes the characters, of course, feel more real, and it works very well. The story is spinning a lot of interesting intersecting threads. The main mystery of the murders, Gesicht's nightmares, the truth behind the war, one or possibly multiple conspiracies. It's all very intriguing. It can seem at times like the show is jumping between separate character stories and plot stages a lot, but ultimately they all fit neatly into Urasawa's meticulously constructed web of interwoven story beats. He already did that with Monster, like throwing a lot of different character constellations and set pieces at the viewer to ultimately let them flow together. But it's even more impressive here, in my opinion. Monster is the bigger, longer manga/show with a bigger cast. But, here it's kind of like, it feels more like, I don't know, like he had this probably planned out, but when you watch it, it doesn't feel like it. It feels natural, like the way going from A to B and how it all eventually comes together. But again, it's been a while. On the other hand, it's been a while since I've watched Monster, so maybe that did it just as well or better. I don't know. I have to rewatch that. But from remembering, I feel like Pluto did it a bit better. But hey, Monster just got a Blu-ray release over here, so I might check that out eventually again, because it also finally got a German dub that seems to be pretty good and is set in Germany. So that I always wanted to watch that show with a German dub because that made sense to me.
A good German dub?
Yes, apparently.
Wow,
rare occurrence these days. So. The only problem is the Blu-rays have like Japan prices. So it's going to be a while until I get one of those, I guess. But yeah, if you take the time to get pulled into the mystery of Pluto and the characters, I think you will be rewarded with a very adult-feeling sci-fi thriller that is very unique in the anime landscape, especially in regards to how grounded and subdued it feels, especially considering its subject matter. Of course, the show also goes heavily into the topic of AI, which today is much more relevant to our daily lives than in 2003 when the manga came out. Like, questions pondered here are what happens when robots get so good at mimicking humans that they might learn how to love, how to hate, how to lie. What would that mean for them? What would that mean for us? The series tackles that idea from several different angles, and all of them are interesting. So yeah, that's kind of all I want to say about the show, because it is a murder mystery. And I feel like all the things, like everything that I say in regards to where the characters go, where we go from plot beat to plot beat is too much, because it takes away from the mystery that you're trying to figure out. So yeah, Pluto is an incredible show, which didn't get the attention it deserves, because Netflix didn't properly advertise it and buried it in their release calendar, whatever.
Shock.
Yeah, what a surprise. Regardless, you can watch it there.
Did they release it all at once, or?
Yeah. Yeah, they released it to be binged. And like I said, it was I don't even know if it was on the main page, like maybe for one day or for 1 week or something, but
Probably not, I would imagine.
Yeah, aside from releasing one trailer, there was not really any buzz about it. I saw it on several best of the year lists of people and was happy about that. But I feel like it didn't get the attention and hype and, promotion that it deserved, considering for what kind of prolific project it is. Like it's an adaptation of a reinterpretation of an really established franchise, like a very famous mangaka, like of Osamu Tezuka, right? So, and of a guy who has received several awards for his work already, Naoki Urusawa, and has done some high-profile stuff like Monster. A lot of people know Monster. So I feel like this should have been bigger than it was.
Yeah, but also your average Netflix user isn't probably looking to find something quite this niche.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like I said, it is a crime mystery thing. It is very slow and methodical in a way. Never boring. Don't get me wrong. But I would say it all depends on what kind of what kind of sensibilities you have and what you look for when you watch a show. And maybe, I don't know, maybe also the keywords Netflix used or whatever were not the right thing. And it put people off. I don't know. But the people who checked it out, at least the ones I heard about, most of them loved it and were like, holy shit, this is really good stuff. And yeah, that's why I encourage everyone to seek it out, because it's one of those miracle shows that don't happen that often. Like, an adaptation people have been asking for ages, me being one of them, that actually lives up to its hype and then some. Like a thrilling sci-fi murder mystery, fantastic characters, incredible production values, an interesting interpretation of an established iconic franchise, thoughtful discussions about engaging themes. It kind of has it all. It's a complete package. Like if you can deal with the somewhat methodical pacing and its very dialogue-driven nature, then when compared to your standard action-driven anime, you will probably like or love this. I definitely do. And I hope we get another stellar adaptation of one of Urasawa's other works. Maybe 20th Century Boys? But yeah, if we got that in the not too distant future, I would love that very much.
All right, so next up is a little bit of race car driving. Which I think the last time we talked about this was Appare Ranman.
Yes, and that was a racing show in the loosest sense of the term, I guess, of the words.
It had racing in it.
It had racing in it. It had a bunch of other things in it. That were great, all great. Appare Ranman was a fantastic show. Hey,
this is not Appare Ranman.
No,
this is Overtake, though.
Yes, it's a different show, very grounded in reality.
That is definitely the best way to word it or describe it. So I, like you, have taken the brief overview from the very nice writers at MAL Rewrite. Mm-hmm. And the summary is as follows. Ever since he published a picture that sparked a wave of online harassment, freelance photographer Koya Madoka has lost everything. His wife Sayako Yukihira, his confidence, and his courage to photograph people. However, years later, a job offer introduces him to the exhilarating world of Formula 4 racing. A single fierce battle between the amateur drivers in the junior category of open-wheel car racing becomes enough to make Madoka unable to put his camera down. When Komaki Motors' Haruka Asahina bursts into tears on the track, Madoka manages to capture this vulnerable moment. This photo eventually leads Madoka to an impulsive decision. He will help sponsor both the Komaki team and Haruka himself. But the unreasonable costs of the sport quickly cause Madoka to reassess his ambitions, and he seeks different ways to support the severely underfunded F4 team. Despite the uphill battle, Madoka's determination for Haruka to succeed may be the trigger that can propel the young driver straight to the top. Overtake was produced by Troika, who we have mentioned briefly before, and you've said chiefly Recreators, but they've done some other stuff that we have talked about as well. I think Recreators is probably our favorite of the lot, though.
Yeah, and I think it shares the most in common because it's also got the same director or writer as Overtake.
Aoki is the director, as he was of Recreators. I am going to check real quick if it was the same writer. I don't believe it was. So Overtake was written by Ayumi Sekine. Doesn't look like they had much involvement with Recreators.
But Aoki, aside from Recreators, also directed Fate Zero, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
I believe yes. We're researching in real time, friends.
And he also worked on Black Lagoon, right? Yes. Okay. So these are all shows I like very much. So it's like, hey, okay, this is new stuff from this team. So gotta check it out.
Yeah, man. I think the only show of Troika's that I watched I didn't really like, and I think same for you, was I'll know a Zero.
Yes. Not because of the production values or anything, but that show was just badly written.
Yeah.
The first 3 episodes were okay because they were handled by Urobuchi, I think.
Yeah, you could tell where the drop was.
Yeah.
It was so apparent.
Yes. So,
Say Ayumi Sekine also wrote some other stuff. Like did a little bit about No Zero, but did some of Fate Apocrypha,
which I like more than you.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I liked Apocrypha more, but I respect the production value because it was, except for a couple of the fights which were a little bit weird to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got called out by a friend of ours on that, and then got called out again on the same thing to make sure my taste was consistent with Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yeah, I remember.
But they've been around a bit. Did a couple of Fates. Did a little bit of Pokemon Sun and Moon. So yeah. Music was done by Kana Utatane, who not really familiar with much of their other work. Like I feel like the only other show they've worked on whose name I've actually seen but have not watched is Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill. We needed to get a light novel title in here somewhere. We need to fulfill that quota. But yeah, so the crux of the show is obviously around Koya, as we were talking about before. He called
my animalist called him Marika by his last name in the summary. So that's Koya is his first name, and so that everyone is on the same page. Sorry.
Yes, sorry about name order. I feel like we're kind of a little loosey-goosey on that anyway.
I would go with the first names on this as well. So it's like, yeah, I just want to make that sure that people know what we're talking about. But he's the photographer guy, right?
Yeah, he's the photographer. And what does he get called every so often? I forget. Cameraman.
Yeah. He's like, I'm not taking videos, I'm taking pictures, people.
I'm not a cameraman, I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
So he is on his way to this venue with his ex-wife to take pictures of super GT cars. Mm-hmm. But he
kind of stumbles into the F4 like pits, I guess, or whatever they call these tents where they do the the checking before the actual race and everything. He
gets called over by I think it's a colleague of his, Noritsune, and he gets introduced to some F4 drivers who are part of this big team called Bel Sorriso. He
worked for the boss of the company that owns Bel Sorrino before, like Anna. And that's who calls him over. It's like, hey, we haven't seen each other in a while. And it's like, hey, I have a racing team here. Here it is. Here, these are my racers and everything.
Yeah, and it's a heck of an operation.
Yes, it's the you immediately can see, hey, this is the top tier team because they kind of look like Ferrari. It's all red, and all the good gear. Like before before he actually runs into them, he has a brief encounter with the characters he will actually drift to after that, with them like shoving their or rolling their car to their tent or whatever, and one of them like humming the melody of the Godfather for some reason, which leads to this funny joke when he immediately gets reacquainted with them and then says, "The Don Corleone family." Yes, that was good stuff. So but first, he gets introduced to this world of F4 by his former acquaintances. Like, hey, this is my team, and then he sends one of his drivers to guide Koya around, and then they stumble into the team of Komaki Motors, which is the small family business. Like it's a workshop, like it's a garage, but the owner also has like purchased a used racing car, F4 racing car, and his son is the mechanic, and his other kind of son is the driver. And
sort of adopted son,
yes,
kind of, really? Yes,
that's the question. So Kota is his real son, who's like this very energetic, very loud kind of boy.
Very enthusiastic.
Very enthusiastic, yes.
And Futoshi is kind of laid back. He's like, we bought this car. We want to, have a small race team. And small it is because it's one driver, one mechanic.
Yes, Futoshi is like this stereotypical good, slightly fat old guy who's like, I'm just in it for the fun, guys, right?
And he's always saying stuff about like, oh, well, back in my day, I used to be able to blah, blah, and it's an exaggeration every time.
Of course it is, yes. And the driver is Haru. And Haru, he comes across in the beginning as a bit standoffish. A bit cold or I don't know, somber. I don't know what the right word is. Matter of factly,
isolated.
Yes, isolated. Exactly. Like Koya confronts this. Like I don't know anything about this stuff, but I'm gonna cheer for you. And Haru's like, I don't need anyone to cheer for me. I can race on my own, or I want to race on my own. And you're maybe like, what's up with that guy? By the way, we quickly learn why he is the way he is. So, and then Koya gets to see him race, and that kind of, like you said, or like we kind of learn from the summary from my anime list, is like Koya gets very quickly engaged with the thrill of the race, the action, everything. Like he kind of loses his shit when Haru suddenly gets pulled off the race. I think because of a flat tire or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, he's about to take third place, and then his tire goes poof, and he's got to pull out.
Yeah, because they only have limited funds, so they have to reuse their tires a lot, and we get to that. But he's like, "What happened?" and shakes Futoshi. So it's fun. But yeah, like you said, after that, he just he follows Haru on a whim after the race, and sees Haru take off his helmet and everything, and then just cry bitter tears because he lost the race. He couldn't get it on the podium, and just out of instinct, like really not think about it, he takes a picture of him crying. And that is very significant for multiple reasons, especially for Koya, because we immediately see that he's more surprised by this than anyone. Like he's like, I took a picture? What? And we're like, wait, what? You're a photographer? Isn't that your job? But it's like we and the summary kind of already gave that away, so I think we can talk about it in more detail. But we often see in the beginning like these scenes of imposing dark waves when Koya is caught in his own head. And you're like, okay, what does that have to do with anything? Like every time he tries to take a picture of a person, or a person looks at him, we see him freeze, and we see like these dark waves in his mind. I was like, what is this about? Is this like, I don't know, is this a visualization of his depression because he lost the passion for his job or something, right? So what is going on? But no, that's not it. And that gets revealed later on. And that doesn't happen when in that moment, he looks at Haru and he just takes the picture and is like, what, how did that happen? So from there on, he kind of gets invested and wants to be part of Komakimoto's. And that's where, like, kind of how we start the story and where we go from there. And then it's about him becoming part of that kind of family and, especially him and Haru becoming friends and helping each other in several ways. And that is very interesting. This is more of a sports drama than anything else. This is like, or just a character drama, really. Like the racing is the setup and the setting, but it's more about these two characters overcoming their past regret. This show should really have been called Overcome instead of Overtake.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, but it's really about these two characters who help each other overcoming their past regrets and their trauma. So, yeah, that's really cool. And we have a bunch of cool characters. Like, Koya and his editor Saiko were married before, and then she dumped him for mostly for a reason that we later get into, where it's like, oh, okay, he didn't tell everything to her, he just left her for a while, and we don't know why, and he seems flaky and unreliable, and he doesn't appreciate the stuff she's sending out to him, like the jobs. You think it's because he doesn't have passion for his art anymore, but it's definitely something else. And that gets slowly revealed more and more over the show. And we got the rivals in Belsoriso with the first driver Satsuki, who is the rock star and, always has his groupies around him. And then Toshiki, who is the guy who guided Koya around on the paddock or whatever. And he's like this driven, blunt matter-of-fact guy who also seems to bully the guys from Komaki Motors a lot.
He seems to bully everyone around him because he just wants to show that he can do it. He can be the best.
Yeah, but it's also like you later learn that there's more to it than that. Like,
initially.
Yeah, initially he's like, he considers, for example, Haru nothing but an obstacle. Like, he's in his way, literally. And the reason for that is also because he kind of bumped into Haru in a qualifying race, or in a race where he got judged by Belsoriso, and because he had that crash, he wasn't picked as first driver but as second. So there's kind of chip on his shoulder, and for the first half of the show, I guess, he holds Haru responsible for that and vents on him all the time. But then the longer show goes, and especially by the end, his journey is realizing that he is his own biggest obstacle, right? He's like, he is the guy who can't deal with pressure and lets everyone feel that. And he is not just... He just has to learn how to deal with the stuff that some races throw at him that he can't deal with yet, and doesn't have to unload his problems on other people and stuff like that. So, but also rely on his teammates and everything. So it's like this classic thing where it's like a standoffish rival asshole guy at the beginning, but has a good heart deep down, and we have to see him become less of an asshole, which is always a good journey. The less assholes at the end of the show we have, the better. So I appreciate that. Yes,
wouldn't it be just great if the show ended with as many jerk faces as possible?
Hey, not everything can be Naruto. I'm kidding. But so this is definitely one of the interesting character journeys in the show. We have multiple ones. Like, I guess the focus is definitely on Haru and Koya. But, there's one for Toshiki, like I said, for Toshi. Guess let's talk about Haru first, because he's one of our main characters, I guess. Like, his parents died. And he wants to become a race driver like his dad. He delivers newspaper to support his team. Like, his dad was actually a driver in Futoshi's old team. First, his wife died of anime mom disease. And then
you're not wrong, but...
it's... it's not specified. It's like, hey, she got in a hospital and we took care at that time of Haru, and then, you know, when his dad died, that too, like, you know, his dad died during a race, crashed, burned alive, not nice. And Haru has been hanging with the Komakis from his earliest childhood. So Kota is really like his brother, and Futoshi is his surrogate dad. I mean, they might have actually adopted him. I don't know if that's just implied or actually spelled out in the show. But
I don't remember if they explicitly say.
Yeah, me neither. But there's several moments in the show where it's like, no, Futoshi is his dad. Kota is his brother. There's no talking around that. Like, Alice is his kind of sister, I guess, who is like this childhood friend of Kota. But they also don't seem have that much of a connection, really. Like Kota and Alice have, but Alice and Haru not really. I feel like they don't have that much interactions. And she's absolutely, literally drooling over Satsuki all the time. So, literally, like, there's a scene where she's in a window looking into a conference room where Satsuki is sitting, and she has drool on her lower lip. It's like, it's a blink that they miss a thing.
It's fine, don't worry about it.
And there's several occasions. I love these attentions to detail, so I have to mention this. There's like a moment in the show where where Satsuki is in a hospital and she brings him like this nice fruit basket or whatever, and she catches him with all of his fangirls. And the character design in this show have like these little shadows on the noses of characters. And in that moment, when she catches him, he's not doing anything improper or something, but she hoped she would like find him alone, right? So she could give him the present. And then she sees him with all his fingers, and this little shadow on her nose is suddenly shaped like a broken heart. It was amazing. And there's
I think I missed that entirely.
It's a blink and you miss it moment. Absolutely. I don't know why I spotted that, but then I looked out for that. And in one of the last scenes where, after she gave some very important information, or let's say insight to how she sees Satsuki's thing, especially when it comes to obsession with the race driver James Hunt and Niki Lauda, when he thanks her for that, basically, not directly to her face, but, you know, basically repeating what she said to him, requoting that. You look at her face, and it's a complete heart, like because she's so happy. Like, what the hell? It's like, it's the smallest thing, but it's a super cute idea, and I love that. I thought, man, that is attention to detail. You didn't have to do that show, but it's really cute. So yeah. But the first thing we learn is, in this show, motorsports are super expensive. It's funny how 11 million yen is rightfully considered big bucks by a small team like Komaki Motors, but Ena from Bell Soriso is like, that's cheap for motorsports. We'd spend more if we were allowed to, but F4 has very strict conditions. And budgets are capped so that it can be that it can be an equal opportunity league. And instead, so they put extra money into developing talented drivers because there's no cap on the costs for that. And like, it shows this huge gap between the way of thinking and resources of some of these teams. And that, of course, also offers one of the main problems in the beginning of the show, where Koya wants to become a sponsor for the team, but of course doesn't have enough dough.
I mean, do you have $70,000 laying around?
No.
There you go.
Yeah. So he tries to recruit company sponsors, but the bigger companies don't jump for it. And he apologized for it to Haru for putting him on the spot, and says he's always going off like a roller coaster once he gets invested in something. That apparently also drove his wife mad. I can totally see that.
Like, Koya is a good guy, but he is...
He sometimes just doesn't think.
He goes a mile a minute, and he doesn't consider the consequences.
Yeah, he's sometimes also inconsiderate, and he's not thoughtful enough. And there's another instance of that leads to, that has kind of like this chain reaction thing going on. And because he just didn't pay attention to what he was doing. So, but yeah, he says here he will slow down and really understand the team and sport and not barge in anymore like a total amateur, which has rubbed Haru very obviously the wrong way, considering their interactions until that point. And then he kind of immediately goes back on that promise once he realizes that it's like, oh, wait, we can ask local shop owners for maybe a little sponsorship funds, ad revenue, whatever. So he's a bit of a bit of a I don't know, wavy person. I don't know what the right word is.
Wishy-washy.
Yeah, a bit in that regard.
I'm not going to do that thing. I'm going to do that thing.
Yes. And I mean...
You know that one gif of Tyler, the Creator, going, well, that was a lie.
Yeah. But, it's fine because they still could use more money regardless. So what does he and Haru do, or what do they have to do? They go around the neighborhood and try to procure ad support from local stores. And I mean, it was like, oh, this is going to come back later. And it kind of does. So that's cool. He also gets a Raceman hero sticker from a kid who is interested in him because he's a racer. After that, kid asks Haru if he has ever finished first. Boundaries. That is a very personal question. But yeah. The show has a lot of heart. And, that sticker is the first one that actually goes on their plain white racing car. So that was a cute thing. And just like Koya, who gets very much pulled into this racing world by Haru's driving, Haru also gets slowly enthralled by Koya's enthusiasm. He finds out that it's very nice, aside from your family, of course, having people that see the best in you and believe in you, especially when you're doubting yourself, which Haru definitely does for several reasons. And it's cool. Like, you immediately see, oh, okay, that's one of the things that Haru needed in his life. Like this random person who suddenly is like, I love what you're doing and I believe in you and I think you can do it and so on. And so that kind of changes his attitude towards Koya, towards, the whole thing basically, and I guess racing and everything else. But yeah, first they, have some obstacles to overcome still. Like, there's this nice but also darkly funny moment where, what I was talking about earlier, Koya accidentally, he didn't want to do that, but he just didn't pay attention when he sent his editor, his ex-wife, the material he shot that day on the track. So he sends her, by accident, the picture he took of Haru when he cried. And Haru was already not happy with a picture of him crying being taken. But now Sai sees this, and there's like this fun, darkly funny moment of her seeing the picture of crying Haru and like just brightening up, which is, because of course she immediately recognizes Koya's old passion and talent returning in this picture. But it's also incredibly funny that her reaction to a guy crying bitter tears of sorrow is getting the happiest smile. Like, that's a weird reaction to have, lady. Just out of context. And it gets even worse. Because of that picture, Sai gets someone interested in shooting a commercial with Haru. And that picture actually makes it in a commercial. And yeah, Haru is really mad at Koya for that for quite a while. So that's funny. Like, the show has also a lot of humor in it. And I enjoyed that a lot. Like, there are really a lot of funny bits. I think most of those kind of related to the interaction between Kota and Haru, or Kota and his dad and everything. Like, he's the comedic relief character for multiple reasons. So that's interesting. But we also learned an interesting tidbit during the interview. Apparently, wanting to become a racer like his dad is only half of Haru's motivation. The other half, as we later learn, is that he has only been on the podium together with his dad, and he wants to make it on his own. Like, he wants to see the same view, but like, do it by himself without the help of basically, of course, your pit crew and everything. But, he wants to drive basically there to the podium himself. And we'll see if he likes the view and he wants to become pro and everything. Just do it, with his own capabilities and everything. Of course, and the other half is, of course, he admires his dad. But, yeah. Meanwhile, the Belso guys are just like, I want to win and I'm just following orders. But there are also wrinkles to that. And yeah, we talked about Toshi before, like, where he had this collision with Haru, and what made him become second driver next to Satsuki and not first, even though he's faster. And that the attitude of him standing in his own way and getting very, very angry and impatient and everything and hot-headed is also what loses him his position to Haru in the first big race of the show. The first one that we see in the first episode is nice, but it's very short and everything. And this is kind of like only this introduction to this world to us. There's also a lot of expository dialogue that explains the mechanics of F4 racing to us. To people who might not be familiar with that particular brand of motorsports or motorsports in general. So, you can't really focus that much on the race. But then we get this first big race. What episode is it? 4? 5? I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it's 5, yeah.
Yeah. And that race is exhilarating to watch. Like, the CG cars look good, although a bit too much like they're running on tracks. But whatever.
That's sort of a hard balance to strike with that, but I thought the racing looked fine. So
yeah, absolutely. And we have a great active camera, like lots of zoom ins and outs, cool perspective shifts, cool tracking shots. They're really doing a lot to make the most of the CG cars and CG environments and to make the racing feel the most dynamic it can look. It definitely looks more dynamic than when you look a live Formula One race or something like that, because the camera can only do so much. So I
think some racers will have like a cockpit camera, but you don't see that too often.
I mean, most of them do these days, I think, and depending on where you watch it, you can actually decide which camera you want to see the race from. But I feel like having a really scripted kind of camera shift in this, where it's like really focusing on where the action is and everything, is still something entirely different. Like it's directed, right? A live race is not really directed. I mean, to an extent, because you have cameramans making sensible decision and stuff like that, camera people. So it's like, oh right, yeah. There can definitely be interesting dynamic camera perspectives in there. But I feel like in a show, like in a fictional show and everything, and especially in anime where you have even more freedom when it comes to camera movement and everything, that still makes the scenes feel more dynamic. Like you have really the camera turning around, like the angle turning around, sometimes going on its head and everything. So yeah. They really make the most use of that to make the races feel really cool. There are actually not that many actual races in the show, surprisingly. Like I said, the focus is more on the character development and drama and the comedy, I guess. But the races are kind of like, we have a bunch of qualifying and then, some flashbacks and so on. And, the whole setting is the racing world. But the actual racing, it's not like something like Haikyuu where it's all building up to a game every other episode or something. It's not really the case here. Like there are a lot of episodes that don't have any racing in them, really, or not much, like maybe 2 minutes or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also kind of helps to show that there's a lot more prep work in motorsports than, like... For like you said, Haikyuu, you could just jump on the court and play a game. Yeah. Here you have to gather all of the pit crew, that, the other thing. You have to do your repairs between races. So it gives the show the ability to have these really strong character-driven moments in between.
Yes, and it shows you that there, like you said, there's more to this than just the races. A lot goes into preparation. A lot goes into strategy. Like that puts a nice spotlight on that as well, how much this sport is reliant on the right strategy. Which driver from your team should be in front? When do you make your play at passing someone? Risk versus reward. In a later race in the rain, it's all about which tires to use. It's pretty engaging. When to refuel doesn't seem to play a part in here, but also maybe the F4 races just don't run long enough for that to factor into it. I know that
I'm not sure about.
In F1 it definitely is. Right? Like, do you still go one more round without, because you're lighter when you the car is lighter when you don't have as much fuel in the tank, so maybe you use it to your advantage, or should you maybe refuel now? So that's also a big part of the tactics in that sport. So we don't see that here, but we definitely go into the other stuff with the tires and everything, and positioning and all that stuff. So that's cool. It's absolutely cool. The show does a good job of introducing you to the world, like spending enough time in there and showing you all the different aspects of it. So making this sport look attractive, which I'm pretty sure it was partially funded by Japan F4 League or something.
Well, and look, you could see all the real world brands on stuff throughout different episodes. So it's like, yeah, they got their sponsorship.
So yeah. There's this moment I talked about before where like Haru gets really mad for his photo being used, kind of without his permission in the commercial, especially in a moment that he maybe is not too proud of. But I feel like people should empathize more with him for being mad, which not a lot of them really kind of do.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Yeah, it was a very personal moment that Koya took a picture of without asking first if that would be okay. And then he sent his boss the photo without intending to, but it doesn't necessarily make it better. Like, pay attention, dummy. Yes, it led to good things, of course, because they got the sponsorship from, what was it called, Mizukami or something, the water company or what it was that puts their brand on their car for a while. Yeah. But it's also very rude.
Mikazuki, that's it.
Yeah. And to be fair, Koya apologizes a lot for it, but it doesn't help that he and Satsuki rub in the fact that Haru cried because he lost so much. Like every time he hears you lost, it's like an arrow to his heart. And I can understand that. And it's like, hey, maybe pay attention to that. And we later learn something, of course, about Koya, where it's like, okay, we understand why he feels especially sorry for that, but also maybe because he had that past experience, maybe he should have paid more attention to what he was doing when he sent the photos out and stuff like that. So one of the most integral key plot points of this show is like that Koya doesn't take pictures of humans anymore because of an assignment a while ago where he was sent to an earthquake zone and something happened there. He took a picture, and that picture kind of led to an outrage. And we are meant to believe that is the thing, like that outrage was what like let him fall into depression or whatever, stopped him from taking pictures of humans, of people. And there is kind of like this connection in terms of being afraid of certain things to Haru here as well. Like Haru says that he is still afraid that he is the one pushing his dad too much by cheering him on all the time, and thus being a part in his father's accident. He also thinks people cheer more for themselves because it gives them a good feel to be there for someone. Haru cheered his dad because he wanted to stand on the podium with his dad again. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Also, you were just a little kid, dude. Cut yourself some slack.
Yeah, I feel bad for you, Haru, but come on, that wasn't on you. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, he later realizes that, but it's one of the things. It's one of his holdups that like his chip on his shoulder, like that constantly is in the back of his head. And the same is with Koya. Something about what he experienced in that earthquake zone is always in the back of his mind and is stopping him from, going forward with the stuff he likes or returning to the stuff he likes and doing what he really likes, which is, taking good pictures of people, I guess. So Haru says that in terms of people who cheer for each other and everything, he says Koya is a bit different for him. Like he doesn't go into details, but he seems to either feel a genuine desire to support him from Koya, or just a connection between them in regard to their past experiences and regrets. So that's nice. They form like this kind of deep connection. There's this great emotional moment when they visit Haru's family grave, and he tells his dad that he will be on the podium one day and Koya will take his picture when he gets there. So Koya actually made Haru believe in himself, says like, hey, I'm gonna be on this podium. So Haru does the same for Koya here, like kind of a believe in the one who believes in you situation. He's like, I believe you will be the one who will take the picture when I'll be on the podium by myself for the first time, like achieving it on my own. So that was a very nice moment. We get like this small intersection story that doesn't really have to do with anything, except we get a bit of character development between our like three rivals, Satsuki and Toshi and Haru, where it's like this 10-kilometer run, which is like a nice way to have the characters interact in for them unusual situation, like outside of the racing world. And I also totally empathize with Kota here. I hate running. These knees were not made for it. And it's so boring. Not in the show, though. Like, we get some nice interaction between Kota and Alice, where we learn more about her dedication to being a grid girl. Although when it comes to her diet, she's just as, unreliable as Koya is with his stuff. But yeah, we learned some interesting stuff about Satsuki. Like, he's always so cheerful because he thinks that attracts good luck, which he deems one of the most important factors in winning a race. And we learned that Ina apparently was, the team owner of Bolseriso. The team owner of Bolseriso was on the same team back in the day with Futoshi and with Haru's dad. So there's a connection there as well. We knew that they were friends before or acquaintances, but we didn't know they had that kind of history. So that was interesting. And there's this nice moment at the end of the race when Haru gets hugged by Futoshi for winning him a bit of eel, not steak in the race. And Koya takes a picture, which feels like this is the turning point. It feels like, oh, now he can actually take pictures of people again. But, that then is kind of a bit put a stop to in the next race, which takes place in the rain, and there's a crash. One of the characters is getting hurt, and so that kind of puts a dampener on and makes Koya pull back again a bit, and Haru then seeking him out. And trying to find what is going on, and them having like this little interaction or multiple interaction in different occasions, and doing some stuff in another town. The Komaki also loses the sponsorship because the company wants to distance themselves from Koya after getting complaints about his past, a photograph, a scandal, and whatever. And all of that figures into kind of like the pre-climax of the show, where Koya and Haru like do a bit of soul searching, I guess, mostly Koya, in the town where that earthquake happened, and where whatever Koya experienced, which we learned there, we learned like the whole backstory of what actually happened, and him finally coming to grip with that. And having a resolution to that, and him overcoming his curse, so to speak. So that's probably the most, from a character character perspective, one of the most important moments in the show, and one of the most emotional ones too. Like, there's this kind of like end point to this, where he gets reacquainted with someone he met that day, and after not seeing him for a long time, and it's very tear filled, and I got water in my eyes as well in that moment, and it was really good. I assume you felt the same about these moments.
Yeah, it was a really good moment.
I kind of like that the show doesn't give us a definitive answer if it was a good or a bad thing that Koya took, the picture he took that led to the outrage during the earthquake situation there. It's like there are people who are definitely on his side, who like Kota, who when he learns the truth, he's definitely like, no, Koya didn't do anything wrong, right? Fuck all the other people who tried to gaslight him or whatever, right? But there's also some characters who's like, yeah, well, it's not that easy. It's a bit more complicated than that. And I feel like the show never completely absolves him, but it definitely shows us why he did what he did. And I feel like his reasoning for why he did what he did was very understandable. And a lot of that, in my opinion, a lot of the outrage is related to people literally not seeing the whole picture, not knowing why he took the picture, why he did what he did, and then making their own assumptions. And he acknowledges that. He's like, hey, a picture can only take that particular moment in time. It can only depict that. And everything that happened before and after that, you don't know. or you might not know. Like there's this real life context. There's like he refers to another famous photograph of a famous photographer that like sparked anti-war protests all around the world, and it's less like there was more context to that picture that people didn't know about. And it's the same for his picture. On the face of it, it seems like a really bad situation, and you were like, holy shit, that seems not. You probably shouldn't have done this. And then you learn the truth about this, and you learn how that came to be, and why he decided to publish it, which is the other part of that. Even after okay, I now get why the picture was taken, and that okay is fine, and I get, but why did he publish it, right? Like there's another part of the story that seems to be more morally objectable. So. But then we also know why he did that, and you're like, oh, okay, no, I also see your point there. You wanted people not to forget about that specific moment in time, especially not the people who were there, especially one specific person who also wanted people not forget about that. And he kind of did it for that person and for himself, because he thought, hey, if I put that picture out there, it might help me overcome the grief I felt since then, and the depression and the fear. And it kind of did the opposite, which is the tragedy of it all, right? It made it worse. But you understand why he actually felt like he had to put a picture out there, because he wanted to share that grief, to share that regret, to share that horror with the people, because he couldn't bear it on his own. And people didn't want to share it. They took it the wrong way, and you feel sorry for him that is the way it is. But you totally understand why when they get to it, when they finally put a bow on that, you understand why he did what he did. And at that point, I was like, okay, I see why you did it. I totally understand the strong emotion that picture elicited, and I also understand your attitude towards it. And I feel like the show doesn't necessarily say, hey, this was the morally correct decision, this was the morally wrong decision, but it gives us enough information about the situation that I feel like I, as a viewer from my own, could say, like, yeah, I'm okay with him having taken that picture. I see why he did that. How did you feel about the whole thing? Everything.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. Like, because I think trying to take a story like this, kind of like when Koya was telling Haruka about that famous photo where, I think he says basically the camera only shows so much.
Yeah.
That in this, this situation that's pushed on us with Koya's photo, is like, it doesn't make sense to tell the viewer, this is how you should feel about it. I think the way they presented it was the sensible way to be like, okay, this was the situation. This is what he did. You make your own decision on it, and I feel like it's way stronger for it.
Yes,
it puts the decision in your hands. It doesn't say, "Oh well." No. I think that would have been really heavy-handed to do.
Yes, and I mean, some people might disagree with that because it's leading towards the absolvement part and at the end there, right? But he only gets absolved by the person that matters to him, right? The other people around him still are like, fuck you, right? In that room, they're like, they want him out of there, absolute desperately. But the only people he kind of cares about in that situation is that one person from back in the day and Haru, who are with him there. And they are okay with it. And it's like, no, please keep doing your job. We understand, do great photographs, like, of people. And that's all that matters, kind of, like, to him. He's like, okay, I can bear the ill will of the other people who are not okay with this. I still think I made the right decision here, right, for me and for the people that I care about. So that's okay. It doesn't, like I said, the show doesn't necessarily say that is the right decision, and that's up to you. Like, maybe if you watch this and you get the review, like, no, I still think he did a shitty thing. And that's totally valid as well, in my opinion. It's like, hey, if you think that was bad on his part, and the show definitely sets him up in a way where you can be like, no, that is also kind of his character, because he is a bit irresponsible. He is a bit
very impulsive.
Yes. He's very impulsive. A lot of what he does is rooted in pure impulse. So, and that can lead to bad things. So if you say like, no, I totally don't agree with that, I think he was a bad person for publishing that picture, can totally see it. So that's interesting. That's really good that we kind of have a show where you don't have these black and white stances. It's like, nope, this is kind of a gray area thing. And I think the same thing they do in a smaller version with the picture of he takes off Haru, right? That leads kind of, he didn't pay attention. He was irresponsible, and the picture got used in a commercial without Haru's agreement. But it led to them having, for a while, a good sponsor, and for Haru to being able to do what he loves better. And that's also a good thing. That part anyway. The other part, him, his photo getting used without his permission is the bad part. So that's also kind of like, it's not good or bad necessarily. It's somewhere in the middle. And depending on how you look at it, you might say, okay, it's more going towards the bad part or more going towards the good part. But there are good and bad aspects to both of these situations. And that's really nice. I like that the show doesn't make it that easy on you and dictates to you what you should feel about that. And it does with a lot of characters.
I mean, it's also easy to disagree with a show's message that wants to tell you one thing versus another. But again, I think the way it was done here actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's kind of the big, like I said, character development thing. I mean, we still have some leftover stuff. There's still one big race to be driven in something, and the rivalship between Satsuki, Haru, and Toshi has to come to a great climax and so on. And of course, we get some more character development there. I guess especially for Toshi, he has his main arc completion in the very final race, I guess, where he basically he doesn't stand in his own way anymore, and that's pretty good. And of course, Haru does his thing to go there. I mean, there's not that much thing happening to him after he has the scene. I mean, in terms of character development and overcoming his own regrets. After the scene at the grave, I guess there's still a bit here and there with especially when it comes to his relationship to Koya and apologizing to Koya and being harsh to him and everything. And he still grows as a person, but at a certain point it's mostly hey, how do we get that kid on the podium, right? So that's the rest of his arc for this show. So yeah, that's cool. I think I liked all of these. It's a bunch of sympathetic characters, even the guys who in the beginning feel a bit like dipshits, from the rival team. Even Satsuki is he's one of those guys who's always chipper and, doesn't really pay attention to if he's hurting other people with what he's saying, but he's just fronting all the time, trying to be super cheerful. So because he believes in luck being a main factor in a race, and he thinks if he is always cheerful and good-natured, then he will do better in a race and stuff like that. And that doesn't necessarily work out.
I was going to say, he seems to sort of be aware of his own attitude, but then when it sort of doesn't work out for him, I'm not certain he really changes that much.
Well, he does in a way. He is kind of, at some point he is kind of in this slump where he feels oh wait, what my beliefs that I had before, they didn't work out for me. I guess I wasn't lucky enough or whatever. So maybe I should just give up or stuff like that. So but then, like I said, there's this pivotal moment between him and Alice, and that turns him around and everything. Of course, character-wise, he still stays the same chipper guy, but there's something different to how he approaches his craft and his racing and everything now than there was before. So he puts the work in at that moment, from that point on, and that is a bit of a different attitude than he had before. So yeah, different team dynamic as well with him and Toshi, and that's all pretty neat. And at the end, we have this kind of super feel-good episode, good vibes all around. There's so much good vibes in the final episode. I don't even want to go into take that away from people who view this, who watch this, but yeah, it's a bunch of awe moments in the in the final episode. Like, it's really enjoyable. I think the only thing that I felt like was a bit sad, but it's always the case with shows with male sports focused anime, is that, I don't know, the development of the female characters is a bit slim. Like,
yeah, I mean, Alice is there.
Yes, I mean, her part in the show is not about her own story and development at all. She's just a companion piece to Satsuki, really. I'm kind of used to this by now, like I said, with male sports-focused anime, but it's still kind of a shame that the show doesn't give her more to do than support for the development of one of the main male side characters. Same can be said for Psycho, who, of course, is there to, give us some background on Koya and then, him finding back to his old self and her reacting to that. But it never feels like she has a super integral part to play aside from getting him the job or whatever, right? And then, giving us a bit of exposition on what happened with in certain stages of his life or whatever. So they're both cool characters. They're fun. They're sympathetic. But I feel like I wish they had maybe as much of a big part in some of this as, some of the other characters like Toshi do, right? So, but that's just, it could be worse. It could be Captain Tsubasa, where like the female characters are basically only there to swoon over Tsubasa. And I guess Alice is that for Satsuki, but at least Psycho is a bit of a different beast here. So we don't have something like that in Captain Tsubasa, I guess. I
say Psycho is at least there to keep Koya on track, as it were.
Yes, and it's two kind of prominently featured female characters in this show. They're in a lot of the scenes, so at least the show isn't a complete sausage fest. So that's nice. That's good. So I enjoyed that, but it was like this one of the smallest wrinkles where I was like, maybe could have done a bit more with these two. But also, again, this show is only 12 episodes, so you get only so much time for these characters, and these two are not racing. So of course you have to give the main focus, even though the racing, I guess, is not that much in it. But if you want to focus on that as well, you have to also give enough screen time to the rival characters and not make them feel too flat and be like this one note, haha, I'm just gonna beat the main character at racing people. So, which they are not, absolutely not. There's definitely depth to these two characters and to the whole team and everything, both teams. But yeah, great little series, I would say, John.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, a bunch of sympathetic and well-written characters. Good music, especially like the acoustic rendition of the OP that we hear, like the main theme, the leitmotif, I don't know, that we hear through a lot of the emotional moments in the show. Great visuals, riveting racing action, emotional and engaging character drama and development, which you don't necessarily get from all sports anime, but definitely from the good ones. And this is one of those. It's just a super fun package. And it's easily digestible. Like I said, it's only 12 episodes. You're like in and out. It's quick. It's a nice self-contained story. And it's an anime original, right? It's not based on a manga, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's just there. If you are into this kind of stuff, like if you are into sports anime, or if you are into racing cars, or if you are into good, developed, well-written characters, good character drama, should definitely check this out. Where can people check it out, John?
Before I say so, I was never really super all about racing. I kind of got a little more invested in it because at my previous job, one of the guys I worked with did some racing. I think it may have actually been F4. I don't remember, but every so often he would just like take a weekend or a few days off and you would fly off and go do some racing. And one of the races was actually broadcast online to watch, which was pretty cool. But yeah, so this was a really great story. And if you want to check it out, it's on Crunchyroll. And as far as I can tell, it's pretty much the place to watch it. Mm-hmm. So definitely give this a shot. Like you Cece said, it's a quick watch, and it's just really generally enjoyable all around.
And that is a wrap on the 152nd episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in this podcast is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jack Kaufman. Please go to virt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at @AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut.
Take care, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
A zombie apocalypse is pretty bad, but it could be worse. It could be work.
And a would-be vacation on a cruise liner is fraught with spies, assassins, and danger.